took office, the administration has approved thousands of oil and gas projects. So why didn't you take this pause on day one to do all the critical analysis you just talked about?
So, great question. The Department of Energy, this analysis that the agency is undertaking, it's not unprecedented, it's routine. And the analytical basis for these decisions, the economic analysis, the environmental analysis, is at this point, in most cases, about 5 years old. We've also seen the market change dramatically over this period of time. If you look just at the United States, which has now become the #1 exporter, we've seen massive build out here of LNG, as well as approvals that would double, just if you look at what's under construction, double the export capacity just if the projects that are under construction when they come to fruition. So that dynamic has changed. The second thing that we've seen change is our evolving understanding of the environmental implications of this. Look, over the last 10 years, for example, we've started to really understand the potency and threat that methane presents to the environment. Methane is this super polluting greenhouse gas, 80 times more potent than CO2. And in some instances, some scientists believe that it represents about half a degree of the warming we're seeing here. And so one of the things that we need to do is take in and integrate some of that additional learning around life cycle greenhouse gas analysis. It's really important that the department does this routine work, and I think this will inform how we approach this program going forward.
Thanks, Ali. I know the administration has said this review is expected to take several months. Can you be a little more specific about the length of time this might take?
The department is going to move with speed. They're going to really take this head on. It's a commitment from the secretary. What we know is that there's important information to collect. I just spoke a little bit about the market dynamics. We need to understand, for example, also the impact of potential costs on our consumers here in the United States, on manufacturers here in the United States. A large group of manufacturers that have thousands of facilities across the country making things like steel and aluminum actually sent in a letter to the department saying they have a lot of input they'd like to provide. So the department will be doing that work. It will be engaged in a public comment process. This has to be a transparent process, an engaging one, and they will continue to move that forward.
And as you mentioned, there's been several reviews in the past. Those generally haven't involved pauses. So why this time is there a pause on these pending sales? Some of your critics are saying it's because of politics trying to please environmental activists ahead of the election. What do you say to that?
I think we've got to be clear-eyed about the challenges that we face. The climate crisis is that, an existential crisis, and we've got to be, I think, really forward-leaning into making sure that we're taking that head on. But here's, I think, the critical context for your question, and that is that if you look at the approvals already that have been completed, you've got the number of projects that are under construction set to double the existing capacity, and then approvals beyond that that would double it yet again. So there's a long runway here, and we're taking a step back and thinking, okay, let's take a hard look before that runway continues to build out.
Hey, can you share the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that this rule would cut in the short term? Can you detail that in any specific way for people to understand?
That's I think that's part of what this review is all about, is to understand what are the implications of LNG. We've started to learn more about leakage rates at different parts of the supply chain, upstream, midstream, downstream. We've started to learn a lot about what happens to LNG as it's chilled and then shipped overseas. We're also seeing major shifts in the demand for this product. What is it backing out on the other end? You think about a lot of our allies and partners who use that LNG today actually are on a trajectory to back out that demand, to replace it with things like clean energy and energy efficiency. So this will take all of those factors in and hopefully produce a an answer that helps us answer this really important question.
And is there a specific benchmark that the administration is trying to reach when it comes to renewable scaling that gets to where you could restrict natural gas exports even further?
I think the president's been very clear about his targets and ambition for the United States on climate as a whole. That's getting to an economy that does not put greenhouse gas pollution into the sky by the middle of the century, net zero by no later than 2050, and getting halfway there by the end of this decade. The way we do that is by deploying clean energy. We've already doubled the pace of deployment of technologies like solar and wind here in the United States. Under the president's leadership, we're really seeing a renaissance in the use of technologies like advanced nuclear, folks announcing commitments to invest in that, and plants that were slated to retire staying on to continue to produce clean power. We deployed over 1 million electric vehicles last year in the United States. So I think it's a sector-by-sector strategy pinned down in this North Star goal of getting to net zero emissions economy-wide. And part of that conversation needs to be, as it was at the United Nations conference, how we globally transition away from fossil fuels.
This